Welcome to the Eric-Thompson Show. Passionate conservative fighting to preserve our constitutional rights.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
A Marine Corps veteran and family man whose life's creed is faith, family, and country. Join Eric today as he covers current events from a conservative worldview. Now, here's your host, Eric Thompson.
Hi, welcome to another Eric Thompson Show podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. It is Monday, March 28th, 2022. If you want to check out my political articles, you can head over to trendingpolitics.com, trendingpolitics.com, or you can head over to my website, eric-thompsonshow.com, eric-thompsonshow.com, and I got some videos over there and my podcast you can download. On this podcast, moving forward especially, we're going to be shifting from stories like, why did Will Smith smack Chris Rock yesterday? Why was the Oscars, why was the main story that one far-left radical that says that has an open marriage, which means him and his wife sleep with whoever they want, a child that thinks he's transgender, but yet as inflation's out of control in the United States, our education system is going down the tubes, as our borders open in 120, 130, 150 different nations, their citizens are flowing across our border right now. We've got the Great Reset underway. We've got real estate out of control because of investment from the subgroups. I think what I want to do is I want to focus on, and I want to use my social media platforms, magabook.com and twellet.com. Those are my two small platforms if you want to connect with other patriots. We need to focus on a couple things. Before we get to the news, let me cover these with you because this is my reset. I speak about these issues a lot, but I'm really going to focus in on just these only as I mature the show. Number one, in 1971, Nixon took us off the gold standard. In 1971, the World Economic Forum launched. In 2022, Joe Biden and the globalists over working in England and other nations around the world are now saying, well, our dollar, our currency's we're in debt and our currency's a mess. So let's go to a digital global currency. So we're going to talk about that. What is modern monetary theory and how and why has our government in the United States run our debt up through the roof and nobody seems to care? You'll be surprised when you hear the answer. So the Great Reset, the United Nations Agenda 2030, and the Green New Deal group, they want everything really in motion by 2030, which is why Biden in his new budget is introducing a billionaire's tax on unclaimed wealth, on stock you own, but you haven't sold it, but they think that you have a certain value in them, or you have a house and your house you bought for 100 and it's worth 400, then you should pay taxes on that wealth. That's a wealth tax. You didn't sell the house, you didn't sell the stock, but we need tax revenue. So we're going to go after billionaires starting out, then we'll work our way down to the 10 millionaires and then the millionaires. But they actually do want to start going after wealth that you haven't claimed and tax you 20% on it. And why? And how do we get to this mess? Because our government it's been infused with former leadership of BlackRock Financial and their advisors for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And these are the globalists. Joe Biden, as we know, is in bed with China because of his deals with Hunter, the former mayor of Moscow, and Ukraine, Burisma, which, by the way, Russia sold their interest in Burisma the day before they attacked. But that's a whole other issue. So as the world's worrying about why Will Smith slapped Chris Rock last night during the Oscars, we have the Great Reset underway. We've got the globalists underway. We've got the subgroups of the Great Reset buying up tens of thousands of residential properties in the U.S. for the express purpose of driving up rents and real estate costs in those markets. So they're willing to overpay. But we're talking tens of thousands, billions and billions in dollars that this BlackRock Financial that's working with the Great Reset in the World Economic Forum, which started in 1971 when the American dollar was no longer using the gold standard. We need to talk about that because there's a digital currency that's supposedly now being considered, according to people I'm listening to, it's already basically done. MIT's been working on it for a long time. But when you see what's going to happen to the real physical money and what's in this digital currency, because the digital currency, the Department of Justice is involved in the creation of it because it's going to be dealing with taking away all of our privacy monetarily. So we have to deal with that as a nation. We have to deal with immigration. Millions and millions of people coming across the border. Until we deal with that and deal with reducing down the influence of education in the unions by getting rid of the Department of Education and then getting everything local and then get school choice, and these unions will get choked out and they won't have the power they do. Education, immigration, the Great Reset are killing us. And if we don't deal with those, it doesn't matter why, which it just doesn't matter anyway. But the news and the world wants you talking about Will Smith, a guy with an open marriage where him and his wife cheat on each other all the time, knowingly, and a child that thinks he's a transgender. But he's like the poster child of what you should be as an actor. We have the situation over in Ukraine with Russia, still bombing them like crazy. And there's still the cries for, why isn't the United States more involved? We're going to be discussing this on a regular basis. I served in the Marine Corps. I believe in a strong military. I have no idea at 54 years of age why we, with all of the nations now that are built up, why is the United States still considered to be the global watchdog? Because some of the nations like Russia and China and India, they're working on getting off the dollar and kind of coalescing around with Venezuela, Mexico, El Salvador, these other oil-rich countries to get off the dollar, to get away from the quote-unquote authority or influence of the United States government. So we have to talk about that. Education, immigration, the Great Reset, United Nations 2030, and this idea that the United States is somehow the moral leader of the world. Because the rest of the news, I'm a political writer, so I have to write some articles today. I'm going to cover issues. Yes, inflation is out of control. Why is inflation out of control? Because of what the Biden administration's been using is something called modern monetary theory. So there's reasons why everything's expensive and why gas is out of control. And we know that the Biden administration will not allow our energy industry to ramp up to get the energy back in line. We know that. And why is that? Because the directions that's coming into the administration is coming through Barack Obama, I believe, John Kerry. They're all part of the Great Reset. They're all part of the World Economic Forum, and so is Fauci. Does that seem interesting to you that for years the World Economic Forum said we need some type of emergency, some global pandemic that would allow us to have people so submitted to their nations that they would allow the Great Reset to start taking place? In September of 19, a group of hospitals, Johns Hopkins, all of them, all these experts did a simulation on what if a global pandemic hit. 3 months later, it came out of China. Oops, that's an accident. So Fauci's been running and part of the NIH and that NAID. He's been running these organizations for 4 decades. He's part of this Great Reset, the World Economic Forum. They need a pandemic. Fauci starts funding through these middle sources, these groups, gain-of-function research in the Wuhan virology lab in China. So they start developing a virus paid for by the United States government. It was so bad that the Obama administration stopped it. And then when the Trump administration got in, they didn't really know what was going on, and Fauci took advantage of it, and he got it reauthorized again. Simulation in 19, it hits in 20. Now China's locked down again, and Fauci's saying we need to be prepared to also lock down in the future. And they're all part of the Great Reset. They're all part of the World Economic Forum. John Kerry, Bill Gates, who's the largest owner of ranch property and farming land in the United States of America. Why? The part of the Great Reset is they want to stop ranching, stop eating meat. So what we have to deal with is the United States of America. We have to become, which I think most people understand as like Rand Paul. Now, the globalists, they call it isolationists, that we're going to go hide in the sand. But here's reality. $30 trillion, and most of it's borrowed from ourselves. And that's modern monetary theory. And what this is, it's a macroeconomic system framework that basically countries that print their own money, like the U.S., the UK, Japan, and Canada, who spend, tax, and borrow in their own currency, and they have total control of it. That is what this is, where you, put it simply, governments who do not rely on taxes or borrowing for spending, since they print as much as they need. And they're not worried about the national debt. It challenges conventional beliefs that governments are supposed to, keep your money legit, raise enough taxes, spend, have a balanced budget, and move on. But because of modern monetary theory, this is why the left is still talking about universal health care and all of these programs, even though there's no money to pay for them. They don't care what happens to the debt, and this is why. Back in, there's an article here from The Hill. So they're not a far left, they're not a conservative publication, so this will make sense. It says Biden is planning a new digital currency. Here's why you should be very worried. And we'll cover that here in a second. My first sponsor, please write down getpuretalk.com. Getpuretalk.com. With inflation out of control, like we're going to talk about, And we've got this digital currency that's probably heading this way. We've got the dollar that's in trouble because the world is trying to move away from the petrodollar, where the world's not going to trade in energy using dollar bills anymore to get back at us for what's going on with Russia and other nations. Things are out of control. Inflation's out of control. So why not do something simple to where you can cut your family's budget on average $800 a year or more on your cell phone service by not doing really anything differently? It works this way. If you're with AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, or Sprint, like I was a year and a half, up to a year and a half ago, you're paying too much for your cell service. A year and a half ago, I got sick of it. I was with AT&T, then I went over to T-Mobile, and my bills I kept getting these mystery charges, and I kept getting overage charges. And I'm like, what's all these data charges? So I got sick of it. So I went on getpuretalk.com, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to choose the same plans. And then when I was done, with me, you would use the promo code because you're going to get 50% off your first month. So not only is your bill going down about 50%, it's going to go down 50% of 50% the first month when you put in a promo code of 3 letters, FLS, for liberty's sake. So getpuretalk.com, FLS is a promo code. Here's what happens. You're going to keep your existing phones. Keep your same phone numbers. They're going to mail you new SIM cards. You pop them in your phones. You turn your phones back on. It's going to say Pure Talk instead of AT&T or T-Mobile on them. Here's the thing. You're going to still be on the exact same 5G network you were on before you switched out the SIM cards. You're going to be using the exact same towers as the big carriers, but your bill is going to be about half. Do what hundreds of thousands of other families have done and switch off of the major carriers. They're based out of the Atlanta, Georgia area. The CEO is a U.S. veteran who understands what it means to serve, and they're a top-rated wireless company by Consumer Affairs. And like I said, everything stays the same, and if you go over on your data, they don't charge you. So my bill for 3 months has been $62.23, period. Even if I go over on my data, because I don't do it often, but if I do, I don't have to freak out and get this big bill like I did with T-Mobile. So AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, Sprint, make the change, getpuretalk.com, promo code FLS at checkout to get 50% off your first month. Appreciate it. We had a record number of signups the last couple of weeks, and I'm just couldn't be happier with them, and I'm glad you guys are taking advantage of it too. Okay, here is something that every American adult should understand. So I just explained to you briefly, you can look it up, MMT, the modern monetary theory, is that the government in this progressive ideology is that the government can just keep spending because they're not accountable because they print their own money. And somehow it's all going to work out. Well, it's not. But the globalists know it's not because they want a one world order. They want a global currency, electronic currency that's programmable. So try to get your head around this, please. Here's how it works. Joe Biden, back a couple of weeks ago on March 9th, they released an executive order instructing a long list of federal agencies to study digital assets and to propose numerous reports on how to use and to regulate digital currencies. But here's what happens. He's also instructed them, the federal government and the Federal Reserve, to lay down groundwork for a new U.S. digital dollar. Okay, here's what this means. It's through the CBDC. The Treasury Department is researching it. And here's how this goes. Is there something called an ESG score that the banking industry is switching over to? Not your credit score anymore. ESG score, environmental, social justice, and governance. And those indicators are going to determine with the banks and the financial institutions in the future. Some are already doing it. Investments, that's why right now they're not investing in energy companies. The big money is not helping the oil companies, gas companies to expand because it's against the ESG rating that they're all working on, environmental. There's no way they're going to give loans to traditional energy sources when it's going to be against their environmental score. Why do you think Disney's freaking out about the bill that Senator DeSantis signed today, which is called the Parental Rights in Education Bill? The left is calling it the Don't Say Gay bill. There's nothing to do with it. That word is not in the bill. But the way this would work, if Biden gets this through, is that they would say, you know, at some point, the dollar is worthless. We're going to stop. We borrowed from ourselves $30 trillion. We're just going to dissolve it. We're instead going to switch the value of it over to a new digital currency, a CBDC. And the way this would work is it gets transferred in, everybody starts anew. But part of this is that your ESG score would be attached to it, and every single transaction that's done would go through the Fed, and they would be able to tax immediately. If the government determines that there's domestic terrorists in the country, like those that are parents that were protesting what was being taught to their children in Virginia, or those who protested on January 6th, or people who dispute the 2020 elections, then if they're deemed to be terrorists, then their bank account will get turned off, like Canada did. You see the danger here? And this is actually happening. An executive order, January 6th, and Biden, his administration, not Joe, because Joe has no idea what's going on here, but they're actually working on a new programmable digital dollar. And the report is supposed to be back to the White House by September. That's what we need to be talking about. Sending $2 billion to Ukraine, which was one of the top 5 most corrupt nations in the world before Russia attacked. Doesn't mean they're not corrupt anymore. It means nobody seems to care. Ukraine was not a good country. The leadership is very corrupt. But all of a sudden now, because everyone's supposed to turn on Russia, I'm not defending Russia at all. What I'm saying is, why are we all focused on Will Smith smacking Chris Rock during the Oscars, and why are we staring at videos and photos all day about what's going on in Ukraine? While millions of people are pouring across our border, and our government is working on going to a global currency that would be programmable, that could be turned off or modified or prevented or set up to prevent you from shopping at certain businesses. If the businesses, the big corporations, say only people with this ESG score can buy from us, then this digital dollar would actually prevent you from being able to buy it at some businesses. You go to buy and it would say, nope, you can't buy here because you're considered a risk, because you're pro-Second Amendment. This is very important. So you need to call your senators, House members, and say no to the CBDC. You can go to thehill.com to get this. It says a digital dollar will not merely be a digital version of the existing U.S. dollar, but rather an entirely new currency that would, at least at first, exist alongside today's currency. Similar cash, the CBDC, would be used to pay for goods and services and would likely be managed by the Federal Reserve. Unlike the dollar, though, a central bank digital currency would not exist in physical form, meaning you wouldn't be able to go to a bank and withdraw anything. So we need to be, this is part of the Great Reset. This is part of the globalization. The countries that the Great Reset's angry at is India, Russia and China. Because they're not going to play ball. Remember in the Paris Accord and all this? Yeah, we're all going to cut emissions. China's like, check with us in 2035. We're not doing anything until then. By the way, we're going to keep adding a coal burning plant every 6 weeks. United States, we'll get rid of all of our jobs. We'll destroy our economy. Well, India is like, no, we've got a lot of people down here. We're not producing enough power for the 1.4 billion people we have, so we're going to keep expanding our coal burning. You see what fools we are? We the people, need to stop caring about what's going on in Russia. We cannot police the world. And the interesting thing about it is, I have people that come to me that say, well, we're the moral leader. We have a moral obligation. Where does that come from? Because most of the people that I hear saying that are non-Christians. So where does that worldview come from? If you're not a Christian and you're not part of the mindset of the original United States, where we needed to have compassion and intervene, but now we're basically a pagan nation with some Christian remnants left in it. We lead the world in pornography, violence, on and on. We need to focus on getting liberty established back in the United States, not sending tens of billions of dollars. We got to stop all foreign aid. Why are we giving money to nations? That's tax money. The government doesn't have a job. That's our money. And I don't know if people think these things through, because they just rattle off, we got to help people with whose money? When the government says we're going to send $2 billion to Ukraine, that's $2 billion in taxes. So what's the solution? Well, we got to raise taxes on the successful people, which will make them stop investing their money, which will take them underneath that $1 billion class, and then that tax does no good if people leave the country or if they reduce their income by reinvesting, and that's going to sit there and they're going to give all these forecasts on how much money that will produce, when in reality it won't. So keep an eye on that. Digital currency. The White House is working on it. Now, Joe Biden, one of the main stories, we'll get to this quickly, is Joe Biden said last Saturday, right? He's rattling off in Poland. No one's listening to him. He's sloppy. He says, and then he gets to the end. And then he kind of freaks out, right? We can't leave Putin in place. We can't. So he's got to go, basically. Well, the fallout is the world leaders are rebuking Biden. And they're like, France, Germany, they're like, well, we're not in agreement with Biden from Saturday. We're not calling for a regime change in Moscow. French President Emmanuel Macron feared Biden's remarks could embolden Putin. He said, I wouldn't have used those terms. I wouldn't have said what Biden said. And what did Biden say? He said that Putin can't stay in power. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power. And believe it or not, the White House is walking that back, that Joe didn't really mean it, but then Joe came out, well, I meant it, but I didn't mean it. So we'll get to that here in a second. But Macron said, hey, I wouldn't have said that. He said, we want to stop the war that Russia launched in Ukraine without waging a war and without escalation with Russia. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that, well, he's a little concerned about Biden's loose talk. Quote, we both agree completely with that regime change is not an object and aim of policy that NATO should pursue together. Biden's statement that Putin cannot remain in power was one mistake he made during last week's symbolic foreign mission to stabilize the region. He was supposed to go there and bring NATO together and be the leader. Instead, according to him in the White House, he kind of went off his teleprompter. Article here from Gateway Pundit. Biden says he's not walking back the comments, though, about Putin staying in power. He's claiming it was a personal outrage, not policy. So help me understand this. The President of the United States, he is outlining his budget. He's speaking as the president. Takes some questions, which is always dangerous. And so they asked him about his major address Saturday evening in Warsaw, Poland. So the media is like, well, you said, for God's sake, this man can't remain in power, Putin, which the White House immediately tried to clean up and clarify. Axios and the Washington Post jumped in, and they said that, well, those notes weren't on the teleprompter. So because he went outside of his what he was told he can say as the president, we can't take it seriously. Yes, the president can't speak for himself. He's got to follow his notes. NBC's Kelly O'Donnell asked Biden, do you believe what you said, that Putin cannot remain in power, or do you now regret saying that because your government is now trying to walk that back? Does your words complicate matters? I'm not walking back. I'm not walking anything back, Biden said, before admitting he has no control over his emotions. I was expressing moral outrage, and I feel toward Putin is dealing. Wait, what am I saying? Oh, I was expressing moral outrage I felt toward the way Putin is dealing, and the actions of this man, just brutality. Half the children in Ukraine. But I want to make clear it wasn't then or now am I articulating a policy change, unquote. And Biden also said, quote, making no apologies for expressing his personal feelings on Putin. And here's Joe saying it himself. He says it a little better than I can, but I kind of.
Kelly O'Donnell, NBC.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do you believe what you said? Thank you, sir. Do you believe what you said, that Putin can't remain in power? Or do you now regret saying that because your government has been trying to walk that back? Did your words complicate matters?
Well, you asked three different questions. I'll answer them all. Number one, I'm not walking anything back. The fact of the matter is I was expressing the moral outrage I felt toward the way Putin is dealing in the actions of this man. Just brutality. Half the children in Ukraine. I just come from being with those families. But I want to make it clear, I wasn't then, nor am I now, articulating a policy change. I was expressing the moral outrage that I feel, and I make no apologies for it.
Personal feelings, sir. Your personal feelings?
My personal feelings. Secondly, you asked...
Personal feelings. Okay. Well, how do we know, Joe, when it's you or your personal feelings? I mean, what does that mean? How do you have a dichotomy there? How do you separate you from you, Joe? Joe even snapped at a reporter during the press conference today, and he said, nobody believes I was talking about taking Putin down. Nobody believes that. Then why are the reporters asking you questions, Joe, if nobody believed it? Here's Joe for himself when asked. He says, actually, what does he say up here? He snapped. He said, because it's ridiculous. Nobody believes we're going to take down. And I was talking about taking down Putin. Nobody believes that. I don't know what Joe's saying, but here he is.
So much experience. You are the leader of this country.
Because it's ridiculous. Nobody believes we're going to take down. I was talking about taking down Putin. Nobody believes that.
Nobody believes that. So that's the main story today. Joe's walking it back. NATO is like, the guy's kind of losing his mind a little bit. I didn't say that, but, we wouldn't have said it that way. We don't agree with him. Yes, he's the president, but we're not going there with him. See, personally, I don't care. When there's 4 million people pouring into our country, some are probably terrorists. We know there's human traffickers. We know there's fentanyl dealers. We know there's cartel members. We just know hardened criminals pouring across the border. That's my concern. Protecting the Constitution and Bill of Rights from this totalitarian government, that's my concerns. Closing the Department of Education, stopping the advancement of the racist ideology of critical race theory, Black Lives Matter, and this indoctrination of hypersexuality and gender inclusion and all this stuff to kindergartners, that is my concern. Until we stop immigration, fix education, get everything back to the local states, deconstruct the government, shrinking it down, exiting these global agreements, then what Joe Biden mumbles, which no one takes serious, but the news hypes it up because they get a lot of clicks on their articles and they get to sell some more subscriptions, then we are losing, we the people are losing as we're talking about why Chris Rock got slapped and while Joe Biden is now changing his mind about what he said. But it's the news. So I already went over the monetary policy with you. We got the digital dollar coming. So we've got to deal with the Great Reset issues. You can look that up, World Economic Forum or the Great Reset. You can find those, and you'll see the videos. And they've got all the documentation from our Fed and everything on their website. They're not hiding it at all. I'm going to finish with this, so we'll let you go. Because there's so much with the Great Reset. But we'll cover that day by day. The last thing is Dr. Anthony Fauci, and I spoke about him earlier, but let's finish with him. He opened up the 2022 Great Reset conference in Davos, Switzerland. The guy that funded the gain of function research to develop COVID-19, which hit 3 months after they did their simulation in September of 19. So now Fauci's back. He went away for a little bit, went hiding. Americans should be ready for possibility of a more rigid type of restriction. So Fauci says, well, I don't want to use the word lockdown, but I believe that we should keep our eye on the pattern of what we're seeing with infections right now, Fauci said. He was speaking at recent media appearances. He's been saying it all over. You know how he does the rounds? He was on the BBC Sunday morning program. And America should prepare for a more rigid type of restriction. And here is, let me play a little bit of the video here for you.
You know, you've said you're going to stay in this job until we get out of the pandemic phase. Of course, you've been serving your country now for decades. Are we approaching the point where we are past the pandemic phase and you'll go get some rest?
I'm not so sure, George. I want to make sure we're really out of this before I really seriously consider doing anything different. We're still in this. We have a way to go. I think we're clearly going in the right direction. I hope we stay that way.
You know,
we have a long ways. Do we have what do we have left to do, Fauci? See, the Great Reset, they didn't really want COVID to stop this quickly because they need, and when you go on their website, you'll hear the videos, they needed this to continue, the lockdowns. It's opened up too quickly. They did not get as much done as they wanted. That's why now we can see what BlackRock's doing by buying up. Tomorrow I'll go over the groups that are buying up all the homes in the major metro areas. And you're like, why are people getting $30,000 over asking? Because BlackRock Financial, they control $10 to $12 trillion, depends on the study. They've got groups that are out just writing checks. Go buy up this whole brand new housing tract. Let's control all of the residential properties, because the Great Reset's goal by 2030 is we won't own anything and we'll be happy about it. We'll be renters. So Fauci's saying we should be prepared for a more rigid type of restriction so the Great Reset can march on. So again, every day, starting tomorrow especially, we're gonna go through what's going on briefly that day with the Great Reset. Any new news? We'll go through any news in education, immigration, and maybe one of the top stories. But until we fix education, immigration, get out of global agreements, quit focusing on things outside of our country. And part of this, by the way, includes in getting rid of immigration. I mean, literally. The House, the U.S. House writes immigration law. We have no immigration, no asylum. If we get rid of asylum and amnesty, if we get rid of those out of our code, and we quit sending payments to illegal aliens, no Social Security checks, no tax returns, no stimulus, then they leave. The illegal aliens leave if we do that.
We hope you were encouraged today. Make sure to check out Eric's website for articles, podcasts, and a daily show schedule at www.ettalkshow.com and connect with MAGA supporters on Eric's social media platform, www.magabook.com.
Name one time in history where the...
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
That's why I invented MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow, and to thank you for your support, I'm going to pass the savings directly on to you. Go to MyPillow.com right now to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. For example, you can get my premium MyPillows, regularly $69.98, now just $29.98, the lowest price ever.
Now get the pillows for $19.98. Use a promo code FLS at checkout. MyPillow.com, promo code FLS at checkout, or go to MyPillow.vip. It will take you over there. Get up to 90% off on closeout sales. MyPillow.vip, promo code FLS.
We all love smartphones. Isn't it time for a smart plan? Pure Talk USA offers Simply Smarter wireless that covers 99% of Americans. Stop overpaying for wireless. Unlimited plans start as low as $20 per month and include the same great coverage. You never pay for any data overage fees, and Pure Talk USA never turns off your data. No contracts, no hidden fees, no surprises. If you're thinking our absurdly low cost means less coverage, think again. Pure Talk USA operates on the largest GSM network in the U.S. to ensure you're connected virtually anytime, anywhere. And our 4G LTE network
now 5G
provides the fastest internet speeds like more expensive carriers. You can keep your same phone and your same phone number. Add multiple lines to save 20% off your total bill. Go to puretalkusa.com and do something smart today. Unlimited talk and text plans start at $20 per month. No contracts, no activation fees, no reasons not to try. Come to puretalkusa.com and see how much you can save. Enter this promo code to receive 50% off your first month.
And now we got a new promo going. Go to getpuretalk.com, getpuretalk.com, save up to $800. The average family, and use a promo code FLS at checkout to save 50% off your first month. GetPureTalk.com, promo code FLS.